how many people have been following enough of the Verizon strike to kind of know the basic details of what the company's looking for? Okay, so we're not going to rehash the the union party line or propaganda. What I'd like to do is just provide a little bit of kind of history to this current struggle, which really does have great implications for whether or not workers in the private sector are going to be able to resist the ongoing concession bargaining trend that is affecting millions of union members in this country. Very much a revival of the concession bargaining trend in the 1980s, which triggered a whole series of strikes and lockouts. Many of them didn't end very happily. I had the privilege of working with the IBEW and CWA members who were on strike in the Northeast for the whole nearly 30 years that I was on the CWA national staff based in Boston, and also dealt with Verizon and its predecessor companies in organizing campaigns and strikes and contract negotiations involving the Verizon locals that I worked with. This amazing group of workers have been on strike 6 times in the last 28 years, which I think breaks some kind of record in the entire country. Maybe the hotel workers at Yale struck more often in that region during that same period of time. And the strikes range from 3 weeks in 1983 to 10 days in 1986 to 4 months. And 60,000 workers were involved in that one in 1989 when Verizon was known as NYNEX. A 1-day strike in 1998, 2.5-week strike in 2000, and here we're back out in 2011 in another, looks like very open-ended game of siege warfare. In 2003 and 2008, IBEW and CWA decided to work without a contract, kind of apply some of the lessons of the Staley experience. Particularly in 2003, the company was very well prepared and geared up to replace strikers and to blunt the impact of the strike. And people worked without a contract in escalating workplace activity fashion for a month and a half, and were able to fend off most of the concessions the company was looking for that year. You know, the pivotal issue again is the one that kept 60,000 people out for 4 months in 1989 at NYNEX. It's healthcare cost shifting. I mean, the company is looking to basically freeze the pension plan, put new hires on individual retirement accounts, put people on performance pay, gut the job security language, get rid of retiree healthcare coverage. It's a long list. But the issue that's getting the most publicity is this question of what people should pay for their medical benefits. Because in 1989, as a result of striking for 4 months, 250 people getting fired or suspended, 2 people getting killed directly or indirectly as a result of the strike, people losing you know, tens of millions of dollars in lost wages, the company cutting off health care 2 months into the strike. People were able to maintain fully paid medical coverage. To this day, Verizon workers in the Northeast make no premium contributions for their individual or family coverage, and we're down to a very small percentage of the workforce that enjoys that kind of negotiated medical plan. So the company really feels that in the current bargaining climate, with so many other unions in retreat, so much concession bargaining going on, this is the moment to strike. As a result of this history of militancy, unusual grassroots unity between IBEW and CWA, which had not always worked closely together within the phone company, the company has introduced a really long-term, systematic strategy of deunionization. It has pursued what used to be called double-breasting in the construction industry, the trucking industry. It has tried to build a wall between its traditional telephone workforce, heavily union represented, and keep its new lines of business, particularly its wireless phone subsidiary, Verizon Wireless, almost entirely non-union. We've been battling this problem unsuccessfully for 15 or 16 years. It's clearly out of control now. Less than 100 Verizon Wireless workers, and they're on strike, are union represented. That part of the overall company has more than 50,000 workers around the country. So overall, we've gone from 60% union density when we had the strikes back in the 80s, even into the early 90s, to a situation where union representation at Verizon, a company with 200,000 workers, is down to about 30%. There are about 10 or 15,000 unionized workers not on strike, covered by separate contracts in other parts of the country. They used to work for a company called GTE, which was bought up by Verizon. So Verizon has a huge parallel workforce of non-union people, managers, contract call centers, 15,000 union members still working in other parts of the country whose contracts have not been aligned with the strongest contract of all, the one in the Northeast. You know, we're up against a major corporation that feels it's whittled its, you know, traditional problematic group of union militants down to the point where they can be crushed. And if they are crushed, it's obviously going to send a message to every other private sector employer that it's open season, because, you know, Verizon, as you probably read, the union leaflets, has made $20 billion for its shareholders over the last 4 years. It's not a distressed company, highly profitable, and you know, it's not a question of inability to pay, it's unwillingness to pay and maintain an admittedly costly, you know, standard-setting contract for the industry. A part of the strategy, obviously, one of the ways that people can support this current struggle is to participate in these consumer-oriented protests and picketing actions and hopefully disruptions at Verizon wireless stores, since that enables people all around the country to do something nearby. While the strike is concentrated in 8 states from Massachusetts to Virginia, and the strikers there can take care of Verizon Wireless in their own backyard, in other parts of the country, they need help from other CWA members, other union members, concerned folks in the community. You know, part of the strategy, and I think this needs to be emphasized more, is promoting what we spent many years pushing with not enough success, which is carrier switch. There is an alternative to Verizon Wireless. If you are a cell phone user, there is only one unionized carrier at this point. It's AT&T Mobility. There's definite problems with the trends in AT&T labor relations, but by the standards of Verizon and Verizon Wireless, they are a much better employer. They've been respectful of workers' rights to organize at Verizon Wireless. So there is a nationwide workforce of 40,000 Verizon AT&T Mobility retail store workers, call center workers, and technicians. Very big difference, 40,000 versus less than 100 at Verizon Wireless. So we need to definitely go beyond the union flyers that say, don't shop at Verizon Wireless. Verizon Wireless is not a food store. People don't go shopping there every week. They drop in every year or so and sign up for kind of a longer-term contract. People can sometimes break that contract. They can, certainly when they renew, look for the union label, and at this point it can only be found in AT&T Mobility stores. So hopefully the union will be escalating its campaign to educate consumers about the right choice. You know, within the region, already people are doing very creative things. There's going to be a march of strikers from Washington and Boston to New York. As in past strikes, there's been a lot of demonstrations at the homes and clubs of top officials of the company. Board of directors have been targeted. People have a lot of history of doing very varied and very creative strike activity. There's a Facebook page that you might want to check out, an unofficial one that was started bottom up by IBEW and CWA stewards in New England. It's called We Are One, Ready to Strike 2011, IBEW-CWA. Hundreds of postings of daily strike activity where people are sharing information about where scabs have been located, what happened at the latest Verizon Wireless store protest, information sharing of all kinds. Very, very interesting use of social media to link people together in an 8-state region at the grassroots level, kind of outside the official union channels. Now fortunately within IBEW and CWA in the Northeast, and the quality control varies from local to local. There's 30 or 40 different locals involved, not just one as there was at Staley. You know, some locals are better than others, but there's a sufficient overall culture of mobilization, of encouraging membership activity, that so far the strike, I think, has been fairly high impact. The structural problem, you know, that the workers face in this situation is their replaceability. When you have a huge parallel non-union workforce within the overall corporation, when you have the ability to contract out customer service work that's done in call centers overseas, or to contract call centers in non-union areas in this country, when you have managers who can be brought in from other parts of the company elsewhere in the country, when you can hire temps, and they're already advertising on the radio for temporary replacements in all 8 states. Workers are under a lot of pressure to have their strike be as high impact as possible, as soon as possible. The company has announced way ahead of the 1989 schedule that it's cutting off people's medical benefits. Again, a major challenge when you're dealing with 45,000 people and their families. 30,000 of those are covered by the CWA Member Relief Fund. It has $400 million in it, pays $200 a week, and the 3rd week of a strike goes up to $300 in the 5th week. CWA also has a fund that's going to enable people to get help to pay their medical bills, or COBRA if they need to extend coverage at their own expense. The IBEW, unfortunately, as great as they are, their telephone locals have no such safety net under them from their national union. The IBEW International does not discourage striking and has never done a special assessment to create a national strike fund. So they are working without a net under them on the high wire, and that's 10 to 15,000 people are going to need to be taken care of in terms of their medical expenses. They will get no fixed weekly strike benefits, and so most of the strike relief is going to have to be aimed towards helping people survive financially. In New York State, if you stay out for 7 weeks, the only state in the country, you're eligible for unemployment benefits. Massachusetts, you are if your strike's not effective and doesn't have sufficient impact on the employer. So people will be filing there, and if they are able to collect, it's not for a good reason. But that's kind of the lay of the land, the history. We could talk more about what people can do to help, what some of the other issues are. Clearly it's a double-edged sword. As necessary as it is disrupting relations between customers and Verizon wireless retail outlets, also pits strikers and their supporters against the non-union workers that we have failed so far to recruit into the union because of management intimidation and interference and union busting. From past experience, I know that when people are roughed up in strikes like this, you know, it takes many years before they're recruitable again. And so even if every concession demand was wiped off the table, we're still faced with a situation that union density is 30%. The company is trying to steadily reduce that, and unless IBEW and CWA members find a way to tear down that wall between the non-union side of the company and their side, the non-union pattern of wages and benefits, no grievance procedure, no pension, pay based on performance, heavy sharing of healthcare costs, you know, that's what the company is now trying to impose on its unionized workers. And the non-union side will continue to drag down the standards of the unionized workers unless, through organization, the wireless workers can be brought up.
Okay. Thank you.
Headway stirring up a certain amount of non-union worker, even other union member resentment about the strikers having superior pay and benefits. You know, service reps, the top rate for them after a number of years in progression is $60,000 a year. The techs can go up to $75,000, and as the company is pointing out in misleading fashion in these ads, with overtime, some Verizon techs in the Northeast can make, and they work hard for it, $80,000, $85,000, $90,000, even over $100,000 a year. So, you know, the union is, its members are being depicted as a kind of a privileged, you know, kind of island of labor aristocracy, And I think the union both unions got to be more proactive about how they kind of neutralize this attack. And one of the ways we've done this in the past around the healthcare issue, and again, it's not being done enough this time, is like Jenna said with the 97 UPS strike, where they framed the central issue as a fight against part-timing generally in the whole economy, in the whole society, as it affected everybody, not just part-timers at UPS. And in past strikes, we've done a better job of, politicizing the fight against healthcare cost shifting, demanding healthcare for all, not health cuts at 9X, Bell Atlantic, Verizon, fill in the blank, depending on what they're calling the company this year. And in the wake of Obama's healthcare reform, the two unions have not been willing to go back to that position that we need national health insurance. We need to get this issue off the bargaining table. We need universal coverage so that everybody has good benefits. And, if you don't do that, your benefit plan, which most strikers feel is kind of a Chevy everybody should have, is going to be demonized as a Cadillac, a luxury plan that the company can't afford. And that process started with the Democrats during the whole process of enacting labor law reform. Max Baucus, Harry Reid, and Obama himself saying that Cadillac benefits need to be taxed. That's part of the PPACA proposal or legislation. And that higher cost plans and coverage overuse, they contribute to medical cost inflation, and they need to be taxed to help subsidize this misbegotten scheme of extending private insurance coverage to millions of people who have no job-based benefits. So I really agree with what Jenna said about the importance of framing an issue and projecting it in a way that resonates with the broader working class, because if you don't do that, you are part of a small militant minority that has every right to fight hard for what you have, but if too many other people don't have it, whether in the form of health care, pensions, decent pay, job security, there's going to be too many people that are going to begrudge that and not come to your aid unless you're seen as fighting for them too. Are really, really hard to overcome unless you're willing to rock the boat. And encouragingly enough at Kaiser, back to Earl's point about, let's support something here locally, some unions are breaking ranks from the Kaiser Labor Management Partnership. You're going to have 3 days of strike activity California-wide here, September 21st, 22nd, 23rd, involving more than 20,000 members of the new National Union of Healthcare Workers, the California Nurses, a smaller union of stationary engineers. And if they succeed in drawing in a couple of other unions who've been partnering with Kaiser for too long, the strike will be even bigger. And the issues are the same. Kaiser is very profitable, like Verizon. They're looking to make workers pay more, healthcare workers, for their own healthcare coverage, freeze traditional pensions, put everybody on individual retirement accounts, and do away with retiree healthcare. Kind of sounds familiar? It's like right off the Verizon concession list. So, we could have a situation right around Labor Day here, major strikes still going on, or major strikes still going on the East Coast, a 2 or 3 day overlapping 1, 2, 3 day protest strike about similar concession demands by a profitable, high-profile employer on the West Coast. And I think take your pick which one you want to support. Support them both, because I think they're equally important to the kind of fight back that people are talking about here tonight. I'm going to pass out a flyer for an event next week where there will be some folks undermining by unions that are more management-oriented. Out of contract for a while. When that happens, the no strike clause that usually constricts union activity in the workplace goes away. You're able to strike over grievances, which is something most unions don't do anymore, haven't done in 30 or 40 years. Some of the major struggles in the 80s and 90s at Pittston and Staley, people worked without a contract, worked a rule, raised hell in the workplace for 6-9 months before they were forced out by being locked out or going out into a full-scale strike. And the advantage of a lockout is it improves your legal position in terms of eligibility for unemployment benefits in many states. And it also can help you in the court of public opinion, right? The boron workers, if you've seen that great documentary about their struggle out in the desert there, the ILWU, they were able to say, hey, we were locked out, we didn't go on strike. It gives you a little bit of a higher ground. But whether you're staying on the job or having a high-impact strike, you got to lay the groundwork. And you know, CWA and IBEW for years have done 6 to 9 months of mobilization training in the run-up to any one of these contract expirations. People just didn't kind of walk out and improvise, though there's a lot of improv going on at the moment, and always has been. But you know, rebuilding the steward structure, expanding the workplace network, so you have people who aren't necessarily grievance handlers functioning as mobilization coordinators. The Teamsters did the same in the run-up to the UPS strike in 1997. You know, when you empower the rank and file, when you share information about what the issues are, when people have an opportunity in small groups to discuss, okay, what are our options at expiration? Should we work without a contract? Should we have a selective strike, an all-out strike? You know, and are familiar with this, and these decisions are not just totally being made from the top without consultation with the membership, without you know, reference to any past experience. That's where you know, run into ineffective work to rule campaigns, ineffective strikes, losing strikes, or lockouts. So I think clearly the interesting overlay of the new media only works if you've got a base of empowered, knowledgeable, active members. In a telephone strike, walking around in a circle with a sign at a garage after, you know, the scabs have driven out in their trucks to do struck work, or picketing an empty call center because that work has been shifted to a contract call center in Arizona from, you know, Andover, Mass. Hey, post one person there and send everybody else out on the road following the work, or disrupting a Verizon wireless store, or going to Ivan Seidenberg's birthday party, or disrupting some you know, tennis tournament they're sponsoring. I mean, you have to be in their face everywhere that, you know, something is going on that has the company's name on it. And that kind of creativity and membership activity involving strikers, their families, and supporters is energizing. It develops new leaders. It gives a whole new generation of people the experience of union militancy in hopefully a positive way in a struggle that will hopefully have somewhat of a happy ending.